Welcome to Heroes First Podcast, sponsored by Fund the First, the nation's leading verified crowdfunding platform for first responders, military, and medical professionals. And now, your host, broadcasting from Long Island, New York, Robert Garland.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this episode of Heroes First Podcast. Each show, you will hear from a new guest that portrays excellence in the first responder, military, or medical professional field. If you are an active or retired member of the service, or even a family member or a friend, then this show is for you. Our podcast is also proud partners with the Everyday Heroes Podcast Network and the Law Enforcement Today Podcast Network. I would like to present to you our guest for episode 20 of this podcast series, Donna Michaels. Hi, Donna. How are you?
I'm doing great, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And actually, let me correct myself. Donna Michaels, retired deputy, master deputy, right? Master class deputy.
That is
there we
correct.
go. Congratulations on your retirement. That is
Thank you. I was excited just going through the drive-through on my way home just to show the Chick-fil-A guy that retired at the bottom of the ID. I'm like, I don't need the discount. I just want to show you that it says retired.
That's awesome. So how many years did you serve?
I did 21 sworn, but 20 on the books. I was a volunteer for a year trying to get hired when I was first trying to get on. They were on a hiring freeze. So I earned it by working for free.
Wow. So, and what department was that out of?
Orange County.
Orange County.
Florida.
All right. Busy?
Very.
Yeah.
If you remember 2016, we had the Pulse incident.
Oh, that's right. That's okay.
Yeah. It's the tourist capital. It's very busy.
Okay. Did you have any involvement at that?
Just after the fact perimeter stuff, nothing that would have affected me in any way.
Right. Okay.
But I have close friends that were, and you know, it's horrific what those first responders had to deal with in that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we see this time and time again as first responders. We always see some of the most horrible things on the planet, you know, but we always get through it because we have each other, you know, and you and I, we've spoken about camaraderie before and having that fellowship. And, you know, it's really important to make sure that stays true within our communities, especially with law enforcement.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and that's the difference between us and the firefighters. They've got the firehouse where they break bread together, they sit together, you know, between calls. In law enforcement, we don't have that, you know, and depending on where you work, like where I work, we're one-man cars. We don't ride with a partner. So you're by yourself, you know, and we now more than ever, we need to go back to building that brotherhood again, you know, in the sisterhood.
It really needs to come back. It needs to get stronger, and people need to really speak about it a lot more than they've been speaking about it in the past. You know, so let's backtrack for a second. You know, I always like hearing about ranks in every department. With the NYPD here, you know, the rank structure is police officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, deputy inspector, inspector, chief, and then we have detectives, obviously, between police officer and sergeant, which is discretionary rank. Every department is different. All rank structures are different. You know, when you hear master deputy, you know, what does that mean? Where in the rank structure were you? How does that work? Is there a test system? How does it go?
It's not tested. You have to have at least 10 years tenure. It's for those of us who don't want to be supervisors, pretty much. I mean, we're qualified, but we, like me, in our agency, you could be the most senior guy at your level. And when you get promoted, you go to the bottom of the barrel and you get midnight shift, right? I'm a single mom. I don't want midnights. And I was very happy where I was doing what I did. So, and I had seniority where I was. So I got to my 10-year mark, and back when I made it, which was in 2010, I guess, ish. Yeah, because I was there in 2000. So in 2010, back then you had to have so many hours of volunteer hours in the community. You had to have so many hours of expertise sharing, which means teaching, you know, recruits or teaching or FTOing, you know, new hires or whatever, teaching. And then you had to have so many hours of training yourself, meaning you were trying to better educate yourself. You were applying for classes and whatnot. And it was, and they did it on a 2-year cycle. So you were constantly logging your training hours and your volunteer hours. And then at the end of your 2-year cycle, you submitted your paperwork. and you basically got to keep your master deputy status. A few years ago, first of all, they took away the volunteer opportunities. Some lawyer came along and said that it was some sort of labor law that was being broken. So they said you can't compensate, i.e. promotion, for volunteer hours. So several years ago, they took away the volunteer opportunities. Then expertise sharing got harder and harder for those of us in specialty units. So like in patrol, it's easy to get training hours. You always get new hires coming. But when you get put into a specialty unit, you don't always have new guys coming in to teach. So for those of us that went down specialty paths, it was really hard to get expertise sharing hours. So the current sheriff, a couple of years ago, did away with the whole having to re-earn it every 2 years. So now the way it is you have to earn it. And then once you get it, given you don't get in trouble or do something stupid, you basically, I think you only have to like recertify or reapply twice. And then it's like you're grandfathered in. So you didn't have to keep up with all that stuff because the hours were getting harder and harder to find opportunities for.
See that? I love learning new rank structures and how everything works. You know, it's so different in every single department. I talk to so many people about it, and it's so very different. You know, you can't really say, like with our department, you know, a chief is the highest rank, but some departments across the country, a chief is just a patrol officer. You know,
so in my career, we've gone from commanders to lieutenants, and then I think we went back again once, and then back to lieutenant. It was the same thing. They just kept changing the title. Then we had chiefs, and then we had majors, and now we've got deputy chiefs and majors. And then that's the other thing, as the agencies grow in size, then you've got even more upper management to manage a large agency, which we're considered, you know, not compared to NYPD, we're not, but compared to the average, you know, place in the country, we're considered a large agency.
right.
So, yeah, but it's funny. So you get hired your deputy, then you have to test for DFC, which is deputy first class. And then you have to be a deputy first class to be able to test for corporal, which is a junior supervisor. And then from corporal, you test for sergeant. From sergeant, you test to lieutenant. And then from above a lieutenant is a captain. And from that point on, you're appointed. Okay. So the last rank you test for is lieutenant. Not everything after that is an appointment. As far as a master deputy is concerned, it's just a place for senior deputies to go that don't want to be supervisors. I loved it. If I had it to do all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. And it
Don't say that yet. That's part of my questions at the end of the show. Don't say that yet.
Okay. Fair enough.
That's okay. No. I mean, that's great that you bring that up though. You know, most people would not change a thing. You know, they wouldn't, but we'll get back to that. Definitely get back to that.
Fair enough.
So before joining law enforcement, you were in the military.
I was. I did 4 years in the Navy and then 4 reservist years after that. I joke I don't count my reservist years because it was the Clinton administration and nothing was going on. So there was literally nothing to do. The budget had been cut. It was voluntary to even drill because there was no money to pay you. Wow. Yeah, it was the 90s and it was really boring.
Well, thank you for your service there as well. And did you spend time in your 4 years? Did you spend anything overseas or no?
My entire 4 years active was all overseas.
Really? Oh, wow.
Right. I went through boot camp in Florida. Then I went to A school in Mississippi, which was only like 5 weeks. And then from there, I went straight to the Azores in the middle of the North Atlantic off the coast of Spain. Then I spent 15 months there. And then I went to Panama just after they ousted Noriega with just cause. And I spent the remainder of my career in Panama.
Wow.
Yeah, working with SEALs, which was pretty cool.
So what made you go from there, transition into law enforcement?
There was a 7-year gap. So it was a 7-year gap. So when my enlistment ended in active duty enlistment ended in 93, I was forced out because of the defense budget cutbacks, right? And my rating that I was in was overmanned. So it was either change rates to another rating that was in need or get out. And the only thing that was available to me were jobs that I had no business doing, like a boiler technician and mechanic on a ship, and I'm pretty sure that I would have sunk one in a day. So I knew that was not a good choice for me. I am the least mechanically inclined person you will ever meet. So, so I got out and came back to the States, and I had a really hard time transitioning because I was not prepared for the civilian world. But I was blessed in that I have an uncle who was an HR director, and he kind of took me under his wing and kind of taught me how to take all my military language and transition into civilian language. And he taught me how to interview for jobs. And so I was in Atlanta for like a year, and then I ended up in Florida, which is a really long story I'd rather not go into. It's all in the book though. And then I got my real estate license when I got to Florida because my mom's side of the family was all in the timeshare industry and the tourist industry. And they talked me into it. So believe it or not, I was one of those timeshare salespeople for 7 years. Partying, skydiving, traveling. I mean, I was having a grand old time, but it wasn't, in my eyes, really me.
Right.
It wasn't something I could say, 20 years down the road, I want to retire from this. It was just a job and a means to pay bills, but it wasn't, it didn't really suit me. I was good at it because I have a gift of gab. I can talk to anybody, but it didn't fulfill me. Right. It just didn't fulfill me. I never got over missing the camaraderie that I had in the Navy, especially in Panama, because when you work, the Naval Special Warfare community is entirely different than the regular Navy. I mean, it's completely different worlds, very tight knit, very, your family, you do everything together. And to this day, these guys are my brothers. I mean, we remain very close. So when I got out of the Navy, I missed that camaraderie so much, so much. So fast forward to 1999, and I'm working a part-time job at the mall, just, because. And there was an off-duty cop deputy that would work there, and he'd always pop in just to say hi and shoot the shit and whatever. Can we curse on here?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. I forget. He kept working on me. He goes, "Oh, you'd be a good cop," and I'm like, whatever. I did not like cops at all. I did not like cops at all. I thought they were a bunch of gun-toting bullies on a power trip. They got picked on when they were in kindergarten. That was my opinion of cops based on my experience.
But hey, that was me though. That's me.
Sorry. I hope you grow out of it. So no, literally, like the first time I ever got pulled over at the age of 25, the first thing out of the trooper's mouth was, "You must be the dumbest bitch on the road."
Oh my God.
That's how it started, and it went down.
What were you doing?
Okay.
Yeah, let's hear that.
So I was on my way home from work, which is heart of the Disney, tourist area, right? Mm-hmm. And if anybody's ever been to Florida knows I-4, Interstate 4 is like, I will go 100 miles out of the way to avoid I-4. It's just one of those highways you just don't want to get on. But I had to travel it every day. So I was on I-4. And like a lot of people, I was of the mentality that if your lights and sirens aren't on, you have to go the speed limit like everybody else does, right? And I-4 is one of those roads where tourists especially will be in the left lane to decide, oh, there's my exit, and go over three lanes and cut people off, right? So I had this attitude like, oh, I'll follow the cop because everybody will get out of the cop's way and then nobody will cut me off. So I was behind him, and he little by little was creeping up. Next thing I know, we're doing 80 and what was, I don't know, 55, 70. I don't remember what the speed limit was, but we were speeding, and I wasn't paying attention. I was drafting him. I wasn't tailgating. I was drafting. You know what I mean? Pacing. I was pacing him. Mm-hmm. And then finally he lets his lights up and he sticks his arm out the window and he does this number. And I'm like, what did I do? So I pull over and he walks back to my car and says, "You must be the dumbest bitch on the road." And I'm like, what did I do? And he goes, "You're tailgating a cop." And I didn't tailgate. To this day, I will swear I wasn't tailgating because I had been rear-ended and I knew how it felt. And I hate tailgaters, but I was pacing him. And I was speeding. I can't deny that. I just
Right.
wasn't paying attention to my speed. I thought he was doing the speed limit, so I was just following him. Anyway, that did not give me a good first impression. And believe it or not, my uncle was a homicide detective growing up as a kid, and he was kind of a jerk. So between my uncle and then, you know, having a couple run-ins, and it was so funny because when you turn 25, your insurance drops.
Yep.
The year I turned 25, I got 5 tickets that year.
Wow.
So I do have a heavy foot. I or used to anyway. But you know, it is what it is. Then I got pulled over in South Carolina, got a ticket, and he was the nicest cop in the world. It was one of those where you go like, dude, you can give me 10 tickets. You're so nice. I don't care. You're just so nice about it. I don't mind getting the ticket. Right. It, you know, whatever. But so I had a bad opinion because I'd had several negative experiences and I'd never done drugs, never committed a crime. I mean, my mom raised a straight lace, you know, a very conservative straight lace. You know, I'm like, seriously, he's treating me like I'm a piece of shit just because I was speeding. Everybody speeds, you know? And I am proud to say this in my 20-year career. You know how many speeding tickets I've written?
How many?
Not one.
Wow. Okay.
Not one. Because I have the mentality that everybody speeds.
But did you ever call anybody that on the road?
Did I what?
Did you ever call anybody what you got called on the road?
I don't follow you.
When you got pulled over, what that officer said to you?
Did I ever do that to somebody?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. No, because that was the thing. So when my friend was trying to talk me into becoming a cop, and I told him why I didn't want to, because I didn't have I thought in my mind, he was the only cool cop I knew. Like he was the unicorn, right? Mm-hmm. And I hope if he's out there, you know who you are, you know, I still remember, you know, but, cause he was funny, you know, and we joked around and he seemed like, you know, he was a funny guy. So he convinced me to do a ride along with one of his female deputies because he was a supervisor. And I rode along with one of his female deputies and I got to see what it was actually like inside the car on the other side of the fence. And wow, it was like, I tell everybody now, before you judge us, just go do a ride along. Go do a ride along. You know, it'll completely open your eyes. The method to the madness, why we do some of the things that we do that we, you know, we don't understand. Like I didn't realize cops, you know, back then I thought to speed, you had to have your lights on. There's a million reasons we'll speed without our lights on. Sometimes we need to get in quietly, stealthily, you know, or we're familiar with the address. We know, you know, crap can go bad really fast, even though it's not hit the fan yet. We want to get there before it does. And there's a million reasons why you want to get there as fast as you can, but you can't go lights and sirens, you know? So, but until you've done the job, you don't understand these things. So anyway, but I promised myself when I put the uniform on, I would never be that guy. I would never be that guy. I've pulled people over for speeding. And if they're speeding, they're really speeding in my book. Like they're doing at least 15 over. And I'll usually just be like, hey, you know how fast you were going. Here's the deal, you know, and as long as people treat me with respect, they get the same respect back. And 99.99% of the time, they're going to get a verbal warning from me. And that's it. Like I turned my tickets in today and they were laughing at me. They were so old and cracking because I hadn't written a ticket in so many years. Like I hate tickets. I would rather instead of piss people off and hurt them in their pocketbook. Now, if they've already had a million tickets and they haven't learned, that's their fault. But especially young people who really don't understand all the rules of the road, you know, or you ask anybody, what's a safe following distance? And everybody always says the same thing, something about seconds. I'm like, no, it's 10 feet for every 10 miles per hour. Think of your car length. So if you're going 70, you should be 70, you know, 7 car lengths.
Tell my wife that. Tell my wife.
Yeah, right.
She's a cop too, but tell her.
Yeah. So it's amazing to me because my daughter is 15 and a half and I made her just take a local, it's called the Teen Driving Challenge. I recommend it for all parents with teenagers. And it was very similar to what we go through as law enforcement drivers, you know, about how to get out of a hydroplane, if you drop off the edge of the road, how not to overcorrect, how to make quick decisions if something comes up, a collision avoidance, basically. Highly recommend it. And they don't teach driver's ed in school anymore. And when my daughter was online taking the class for the permit, the questions were like, I don't even know this, and I'm a cop. it was asking questions like about how many years do you have to go before so many points fall off your license? And it's like, what has that got to do with road safety?
Why is that relevant? Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yet there was not a single thing in there about stopping for a school bus or slowing down for a school zone or what to do if there's an emergency vehicle behind you.
Well, listen,
Like,
it's
the important
2021. You got to remember, it's 2021.
Oh my God. Ugh. So anyway, but yeah, I could go on and on and on. I just, so when I started realizing that they took driver's ed out of schools like they had when I was young, you know, and I started learning these things, talking to friends who had teenagers, especially when it came to young people, I pulled them over and I'm like, okay, stop crying. I'm not going to write you a ticket, but I do want to educate you. And I would explain it to them as if it was my own child. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I gave them the same respect I would want somebody to give my daughter. And there was, I think, a handful of times I called a parent because what their kid was doing was so boneheaded, stupid, and dangerous that I'd be like, I got this. This is way better than a ticket. Hey, mom, you need to take his car away for like the next, 3 months. Here's what he did.
You know what's
like,
up?
No.
Sometimes it goes a lot further, to just reprimand than give a ticket. It does. It goes a lot further sometimes because they remember that more. They say, you know what, this officer came up to me and they didn't give me that ticket, but they told me what I was doing wrong and told me why. But then some officers will just give the ticket and walk away. They don't really give an explanation. And that person, what do? They mother F us. F you, blah, 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 I got this effing
They
ticket.
don't understand.
Right.
Yeah.
But it goes down to personalities. Everyone has a different personality type. That's all it is.
It is. But I still think this could be a class that they could teach at the basic level, or at least
100%. 100%.
You'll get less complaints. You will, as long as you're polite, treat people the way you would want your family treated,
yes.
Right? And unless they absolutely, because some people you can't reason with no matter what, right? They're going to hate no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Then sometimes you got to come down to that level, but that should be an absolute last resort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's a nice story of why you joined the police department.
Looking for camaraderie. There was something I wanted, a steady paycheck because I was used to that in the military and working in sales. It was all commissions, so there was nothing steady about it. I wanted benefits, health insurance and all that stuff, but most of all, I needed a purpose. I needed to feel like I was making a difference in the world. I needed the brotherhood badly. I missed it a great deal. So yeah, that's why I did it.
That's great. So you spent a nice career there, and during your career, you ended up writing a book, Courageously Broken.
Yep.
Why don't you give us I'm going to show your website while you talk about it for any of our watchers over here. And then also, you can see my screen, right?
Okay. Yep, I see it.
So also, this is Donna's book, Courageously Broken. It's available on Amazon. So if anyone wants to purchase it, please visit Amazon and search for Courageously Broken. But why don't you give us a quick rundown of why you wrote the book, what it's about, and what you hope to achieve out of it?
Well, I like to kind of joke, but it's true. It was a book by accident. I went through a series of traumatic events over the course of my career, like everybody. And I also had a traumatic event while I was in the military. And I compartmentalized it all. The military incident, I never reported. I put it in a box and pretended it never happened. And I got away with that for a really long time. Then over the course of 2000 to 2017, I responded to at least that I can recall 7 child deaths. None of them were like SIDS. They were either drownings, suicides, car crashes, things. They were all, horrific. And on June 1st, 2017, I responded to the call that involved a 2-year-old baby drowning, and the mom was being suicidal with a knife. And we were trying to get to the baby to do CPR, but we couldn't get past the mom, and we were fighting with her, and it was just all hell was breaking loose. We handled the call, And for some reason in my brain, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I couldn't get past it. And over the course of the next several weeks, it was like somebody put C4 on that little black box that I pretended didn't exist and blew it up. And it brought back all the traumas that I had filed away. And I wasn't sleeping. All I was doing was crying. I went into a horrible place, and I had never suffered from depression, never suffered from mental illness, never had gone through anything like that. And I'd had a tough life. I come from, I joined the Navy for a reason. I didn't have an easy childhood, but I wasn't abused. And, but everybody had always told me, oh, you're so strong, you're so resilient, and that's just how I was raised. And sorry, my German Shepherds are playing, and if you hear weird noises, it's them. So in June of 2017, from June 1st to about mid-July, I went way down the rabbit hole badly. I withdrew. I wasn't talking to anybody. I wasn't answering my phone. I was purposely canceling my backups at work because I didn't want anybody to see me because I could barely hold it together. And I, for the first time in my life, and I was raised a devout Roman Catholic, suicide is not even an option in our faith. But for the first time in my life, I was contemplating it because I never realized depression could cause physical pain. And the demons in my head was telling me that I was failing as a mother. My daughter was about 10 at the time. I was failing as a mother. She deserves better than this. If work finds out, they're going to take my gun and my badge. I convinced myself. So I put my daughter on a plane, flew her out of state to be with a dear friend of mine. And I decided that either I was going to put myself out of my misery, or I was going to figure out how to get some help. And I called my best friend that I served with in the Navy, and I was planning on leaving him a voicemail because he was horrible at answering his phone, but he answered his phone that day. And I just burst into tears, and I spent the next 8 hours on the phone. He spent the next 8 hours on the phone with me, talking me out of it, and telling me that, some of the people that I respected most from the teams in the Navy, some of the strongest, toughest men I know have gotten counseling, and that there was nothing wrong with it, and that I wasn't crazy, and that we all go through shit, and it's okay to ask for help. So I didn't want my agency to know. So I went to the VA, and I ended up getting help through the VA on the down low, is what I tell people. And I kept it a secret from my agency for about 2 years. And in 2019, they passed a law for first responders with PTSD because our suicide rate is skyrocketing. It mirrors, veterans. And I had an opportunity to go get some incredible treatment through some research out in Texas. And I needed permission to go because it was going to require a lot of traveling. So I talked to my sergeant, who's a mental health expert. I had trusted him with my secret at this point. And he said, what do you got to lose? So I called HR. I told him what was going on. They treated it as a workman's comp case. And they were pretty supportive. They didn't give me the time off I needed to go to Texas, but they got me treatment locally. And I'm happy to say that and then I was supposed to go last summer, but then COVID hit, and I tore my rotator cuff. So it would have been postponed anyway. So last week, I just spent my first week in Texas, and it was incredible. For any veterans out there who are struggling with PTSD or TBIs, look at bootcampaign.org. Incredible nonprofit organization getting people amazing help. They rolled out the red carpet, and it was phenomenal. And I'll be going back and forth to Texas quite a bit over probably the next, I would guess, year or two. So anyway, so the book, and that's what I do. That's part of my PTSD, which last week I found out I also have a TBI that I didn't know about because of a car crash. That's another story. But I get distracted, and short-term memory really sucks. So the book, in the course of going through the counseling and the therapy, I was told I was struggling with good memories. I understood why I had buried the bad, but I couldn't figure out why I couldn't remember the good, because I would go to reunions or talk with friends, and they would tell all these hilarious stories from the good old days. And And I was sad because I couldn't remember them, and I couldn't enjoy the laughter because I couldn't remember them. So I asked my counselor, I'm like, I get why I suppress the bad, but why can't I remember the good? And they said, the brain's a funny thing like that. Sometimes when you suppress a trauma, it'll take good memories with it. It's just the way the brain is wired. So she suggested journaling. So I started journaling from my childhood. And every time I finished I got several time periods in, and I started sharing it with my best friend, the same one that spent all that time on the phone with me. And he would be like somebody I would call and say, hey, do you remember this incident? And he'd be like, oh yeah, that's when. And it was like sitting across the table with your best friend and putting a puzzle together. And as he helped me recall memories, that I had buried, I was journaling it, and it was amazing therapy, amazing, so cathartic. So I started sharing it with him, chapter by chapter. And he's like, I really think you got something here. He goes, I think you might want to turn this into a book. Do you know how many people you could help? And I was like, oh no, it's way too personal. I can't do that. No. And I sat on it for a while, and then somebody I knew committed suicide. And I was like, maybe if I tell somebody, I asked myself, why do people commit suicide? And for me, it was fear, afraid to ask for help, afraid of stigma, afraid of going off to the mental hospital where we take, the street people, afraid of losing our gun and our badge, afraid of everything. And then when you finally get help, you realize that was the demons in your head telling you that it's not as bad as you think it is. Now, could it be? Yeah, if you get taken to the wrong place with a bunch of people who don't understand what we do for a living. We should never, in my opinion, and experts will agree, first responders and veterans should not be getting treated by people who have not walked in our shoes because they don't understand.
I agree.
But now, say again?
I said, I agree.
Yeah. So, I went to the VA, or back up. So I sat on the book. Somebody I knew committed suicide. And I thought, if sharing my story will help just one person reach out for help, then it's worth it. So I went in and I changed all the names, changed my own name for privacy reasons. And I went for it. And I called the gentleman, Don Mann, who wrote my foreword for the book. He'd been published over 20 times. He's got a New York Times bestseller. Inside SEAL Team 6 was his bestseller. And I called Don because we served together. And I said, hey, I think I've written a book, but I don't know what to do. How do you go from a computer, to a book? And he said, well, send me what you got. Let me take a look at it. I said, all right. And I sent it to him, and he didn't even make it 3 or 4 chapters in. And he goes, you got a book. And I said, oh, what do I do now? Well, by this point, I was at home with my shoulder injury, and COVID was in full blown lockdown, and I had nothing but time on my hands. So I researched and talked to several other SEALs that I know that have published books, got their 2 cents, and decided to self-publish because I didn't want anybody to buy my story and then change it. I wanted to keep it accurate. I wanted to keep it mine. So I self-published, and I'm very glad I did. And that's it pretty much. And it's doing really, really well. I've sold, I know last I looked, it was like over 2,000 copies.
That's amazing. Wow. Congrats.
Couple hundred off my website alone, but I'm at the point now, like I told you, I much prefer people buy online because the books that I keep in stock here are for in-person signings and whatnot. And then recently I went to a veteran fundraiser for PTSD, and they asked me to donate a book, which I did. And I threw in a t-shirt and a hoodie and a challenge coin that I designed, and the package auctioned off for $2,000. And then another lady said, hey, I want one too. I'll match the bid. Will you do it again? So I raised $4,000 off of 2 books, 2 t-shirts, 2 hoodies, and 2 challenge coins.
That's incredible. I'm showing your t-shirts now.
Yeah, I cried. I won't lie. I never in a million years dreamed that something like that could happen. It just it blew my mind. But
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. These are all the hoodies and t-shirts if anybody wants to purchase one.
And the best part is I only do business with and I'm open to first responders, but there seems to be a lot more veteran owned and operated businesses than there is first responders. But all of my merchandise is made here in the US by veteran owned businesses. The coins are out of Mississippi, and the t-shirts and hoodies are out of Oklahoma. The t-shirts and hoodies are, I'm wearing one now. They are so soft that even my daughter, she's like, Mom, can I have another t-shirt?
Yeah.
They're so soft, and they're quality. They're really, really nice. I'm really happy with how they turned out.
That's great. No, congratulations on everything. Retirement, book, awesome career. I mean, this is great. Incredible person. Absolutely incredible person.
Oh, and 10% of my proceeds go to a nonprofit organization out in Texas called Good Canine Academy, and canine is spelled out. And what Linda Conrad does is she's one of the top dog trainers in the country. She's one of the few that can train a dog to do early cancer detection. And she also does law enforcement dogs. She does show dogs. She does it all. But her PTSD dogs are absolutely 100% free of charge to any first responder or veteran with PTSD. And the dogs are trained specifically catered for them. They travel out there, they stay on her ranch for a week, they bond with their dog, they train with their dog, and they come back as a team. And then there's a couple follow-ups, of course, but she does this for the kindness of her heart. She's an amazing human being. I got to meet her for the first time last week when I was out there, and just incredible, just amazing human being. So 10% of my proceeds go to what she's doing, because I'll let you meet mine. Here, say.
I also brought up the campaign that you did on Fund the First for her as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, because she got hit hard in that freeze that they had.
Right, and that's why you originally launched this.
I originally launched it for the here, come on. Can you see him?
Hey, pup.
That's my thing. So you're a good boy. Yes, you are. So okay, go Platts. Platts.
Oh,
So
was it German, right?
Yeah. I got him from a buddy of mine in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, when I was in my dark hole, one of my brothers, he picked up on it, and he called me out of the blue and said, I got this puppy I need to give you. And I'm like, what? Wow. And he goes, just trust me, come get, he says, do you want me to put him on a plane, or do you want to come get him? Out of nowhere. And wow. His mom and dad are both, from Czechoslovakia, and really good bloodline, and yeah, incredible dog that I to this day, they're called man's best friend for a reason. Mm-hmm. They've scientifically proven that they are good for our brains. When we interact with them, there's dopamine that releases. Sorry. 9, it's not playtime. Go play somewhere else. I joke, I'm like, he's my service dog, and the female is his emotional support animal.
I wish I could get my dog over here to show you, but he's just
9. He's out.
He's out.
The female is the one always running her mouth. Go figure. So, yeah, it's just, I'm a huge believer in therapy dogs in law enforcement. When you're interviewing, okay, that's enough. Hold on one second. Hey, Sam, come get the dogs, please. Come get the dogs and go feed them. I'm doing an interview, please. Yeah, it's dinner time. That's what it is. So, yeah, so therapy dogs are being used in courtrooms now with victims that have been traumatized. They have them underneath of the witness stand mm-hmm. to comfort them while they're testifying, oh, wow. on difficult traumatic cases. We're using them to interview children who've been sexually abused. They mm-hmm. find that the disclosure of the abuse is much more easily given and free because of the chemicals in the brain that relax them so they can tell their story. So they're called comfort dogs, comfort animals, therapy dogs. There's lots of fancy names. It's all the same thing. There's a lot of science to back up the use of them, and they're being allowed in courtrooms, and law enforcement agencies are getting them, and they're even using them in units like sex crimes, where they got to deal with a lot of crappy stuff. They keep them in the office, and it's good for the cops.
That's great. No, it really is great. There's so many different uses for them, And actually, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because we are running short on time.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This has been incredible. I love hearing your stories. And that's why I'll have you on another show, uncensored. Uncensored. So we'll do another one. But you touched up on it earlier, and I interrupted you with that. But I'll ask you again because now you have told your story. You have told about your military career, your book, your police career. Would you do it all again?
I've asked myself that question of many times. While I'll be the first one to say it has not fulfilled all of the hopes and dreams that I had, especially the camaraderie over the last 20 years has definitely fallen by the wayside. That's remained a disappointment. But at the end of the day, when I ask myself that question, I can't think of what else I would have done. I mean, I think it did suit me. I think it was a good choice for me. I think there were lots of opportunities that I did get to make a difference, or at least I hope I did, and it's usually the really petty things like the homeless domestic violence victim that's sleeping in their car and has nowhere to go. Those are the ones you help them and then you never know whatever happened to them, but you pray that, you pointed them in the right direction and they got the help they needed. Whenever I had those kind of cases, I took the extra time to really, really try to help as much as I could. But yeah, no, I think I would have to say, yes, I would do it all over again, only because I genuinely can't imagine what else I would do, except for hindsight being 2020. The only thing I think I would have done maybe was journalism, because that's what I wanted to be when I wanted to be a journalist when I was a kid. And I met a journalist in Atlanta when I first got out of the Navy, and he was a jerk and gave me a bad impression. And he
just like the cop did, just like the cop.
Right. Yeah. No, because I come from Panama and I was there when all hell was breaking loose. And he was sitting there trying to tell me I was wrong. And I'm like, I was there. I know what really happened versus what CNN reported. Right.
Right.
Probably going to have to black that out, but that's what it was. He was a CNN reporter, and this was in 1994. But
times haven't changed.
They only got worse. But that turned me off. It gave me and so I gave up on that journalism dream. But hindsight being 2020, who knows? I could have ended up on Fox. That's probably where I would have ended up if I'd have known then what I know now, right?
Right. No, of course. No, that's great. That's great. So with all that and everything you've done, you've seen a lot of people throughout your career. You've done a lot of things. What does a hero mean to you?
I think heroes can be anybody. Anybody could be a hero. It's doing the right thing. It's helping someone without expecting anything in return, without the look at me, pat on your back, expecting a medal. It's that guy in New York years ago who risked his life and jumped into the subway and saved that person who was like seconds from getting hit by a subway coming through. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I just did what anybody else would do. I was just in the right place. That's a hero. That's a hero to me. You don't have to wear a badge. You don't have to wear bunker gear. I mean, granted, we take a lot more risks than the average person, understandably, but you and I both know you've got first responders that are wearing the badge or the bunker gear because they want the attention. And then you got the ones that are the silent professionals. They go to work, they do their job, they go home. Right? That's their job. We just get more opportunities to make a difference in people's lives because of what we do. But Joe, the citizen, right? Joe Black, the citizen, who's just, I don't know, custodian somewhere, jumps in a subway and saves somebody, risking his own life that he doesn't even know. That's a hero. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And he didn't even have time to think through, what if I do this? He just did it. So
perfect. Yeah. Love it. And last question I'm going to ask before we end our show, and I want you to answer it with the first thing that pops in your mind. Don't hesitate, just say it. Don't worry, it's nothing bad. If you were to have one superpower, what would it be?
Invisible.
Why?
Sometimes I just want to be invisible. I'm a shit magnet. You could like today, you know what my day was like, right? You know what I went through trying to get home.
Mm-hmm.
I am that person who is a pain in the ass, even though I'm not trying to be. If shit's going to happen, it's going to happen to me. I promise you. In 2018, someone stole my marked police car out of my driveway while I was sleeping. And I live in a very good neighborhood.
Oh my goodness.
I'm that one who you could have 100 cops, one crazy guy. I'm the one he'll pick out of 100 cops to talk to. I don't know. I used to have a boss way before I became a cop, and she nicknamed me Black Cloud Follows. She goes, if it wasn't for bad luck, you wouldn't have any. And it's true. You know, and I've told people over the years, I'm like, do you think I really ask for this shit? No, it just literally freaking happens to me. Right. So if I was invisible, I could, in my mind, avoid a lot of crap. I could just drift through unnoticed and just be at peace, at least in my perfect little mind world.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. So, Donna, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for everything you've done throughout your career. And actually for writing that book. I know a lot of people, over 2,000 people are going to get a lot out of that and more. More people are definitely going to buy that book. And again, congratulations on retiring. It's got to be an incredible feeling. You know,
it is. I am over the moon. I have several people ask me today, are you sure? I said, this, of all the things I've ever done, I've never been more sure of what I'm doing right now. I'm so elated. So
Good.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on tonight. It's a perfect night for this.
No, this is great. Donna, thank you so much. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you all next time. Take care, Donna.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Heroes First podcast with Robert Garland. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, share, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, make sure to visit fundthefirst.com and follow us on social media at fundthefirst. See you next time.